everybody.
Hey, how's it going?
It's another time for Caserta Couch Time. We're still out for a name.
Yeah, I don't know what we're going to name it, but if you have any ideas, certainly put it down in the posts. I don't know if this is a book review / huge health mind-blowing wake-up call, truly amazing stuff. So I was listening to, we're going to try to keep this as short as we can, but there's so much good information we want to share with you guys about this. Again, we'll try to get it in as quickly as possible. Yeah. But I was listening to a biohackers podcast with Dr. Anthony J, and he was talking about estrogen and estrogenics. And he has this book, Estrogeneration. I don't know if you can see the title or not from there. Estrogeneration, how estrogenics are making you fat, sick, and infertile. And so in listening to his podcast and getting the book, Heather and I have read the book, it's truly amazing some of the things that we learned about how estrogens are truly affecting us. So again, we're not medical doctors, but we're going to just try to pass along some of the greatest tidbits of information that we learned from Dr. J and reading this book. We highly recommend that you get his book and get it straight from him. He is doing work at the Mayo Clinic, has a PhD in biochemistry, truly brilliant in the work he's doing, and working with some excellent people at the Mayo Clinic that are really looking into this part of the science. So just kind of get you caught up a little bit to speed on estrogens. As you know, estrogens are a sex hormone, and the estrogenics, as he talks about, are the artificial version of estrogens. And so they're really having a massive systemic effect on our bodies. And the reason why they're having this effect is because we have, as Dr. J talks about, estrogen receptors in most of our cells in our body. So as the estrogen is coming through and getting attached to the cell, it actually goes straight into the nucleus of the cell. And why this is so important is because unlike other hormones, the estrogen hormone actually acts directly on the DNA. So it's changing thousands of genes and cells in your body. And so this was pretty shocking when I heard it. I don't know what you thought. It was like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, as we get into this, like, I knew there were some of these effects, but to know how long lasting they were, I mean, it's just mind-blowing.
Absolutely mind-blowing. So to give you some reference, you know, he talked about how much estrogen is typically a normal level of estrogen in males, and that was 20 nanograms per liter. The interesting thing was he then asked, you know, what would you guess women would have? And I don't know about you, but when I thought about that question, I was just like, oh, it's going to be like, what, thousands?
Yeah, it's going to be much higher for women than
way
men.
More, right? Well, what he talks about is that women have 20 nanograms per liter of estrogen as well. Now, it's anywhere between 20 to 400, depending on the time of the month, as he describes, but there isn't this massive difference that you think there might be. And so the only reason why we're bringing it up, and he actually talks about this, is that if you have a reference number to compare, when you start hearing some of these other numbers that are in other things, you're going to just be shocked when you start to hear that. So the estrogenics is something that they started measuring in humans, that artificial estrogens, and they were finding upwards of 1,000 nanograms per liter in human blood. So this is one of those things where, as they started doing more research, they started to find a lot of scientific evidence of what the effects from these estrogens are having on our bodies. So some of the effects that it has is an effect, like he says in his title, with infertility. They actually had some science where the actual sex of frogs changing from males to females because of the estrogens that are in the water. The other thing he talks about in the book is an effect on depression. As the title also talks about, it has effect on fat and weight gain. So this one was a really big kicker. I don't know what you thought about this one. I know we've kind of talked about it, but I'd love to hear more about what your thoughts are. So he says that the estrogen is stored in the fat cell, So it's in the fat cell, and then it's also calling on the cells to store more fat. So then there's even more fat stored in your body for estrogen to be stored in even more fat cells.
You can't win.
So it's like a double whammy, you know? And so a fat cell could be stored in our bodies from anywhere from like a year to up to like 10 years. That wouldn't maybe be typical for most people. But even if those fat cells were in your body for a year, that estrogen being trapped in that cell could be having a huge effect on your weight gain that just seems to stubbornly won't go away.
And then it feels like it's just adding. Like it's like I just keep gaining.
Right.
I don't know what I'm doing. It could be some of the things we're going to talk about in a little bit that are actionable, and you'll hear.
Yeah, because you'd be working in the gym, you're changing food, and you're not seeing a difference. It's like, why is this never-ending battle happening? And this could be contributing largely to that.
And I have to say, I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in. I was listening to this book, and I actually had a conversation with somebody. I had a couple conversations with people. They're like, you know, I've gained so much weight, and I am working out every day, and I'm eating better than I ever have. And I wanted to just, part of me wants to be like, there's a book. And I don't want to sound totally weird, because who knows what that particular person's issues could be, but I kind of want to be like, you should read this book. So this is our way of doing that, and to spread this message, because we've had changes in our own bodies, in our own lives from doing this, from taking some of these actionable steps.
Absolutely. So, and like we've told you in other videos, we actually want to be sharing the things that we're actually doing and sharing with you the real feedback. Like we've done it, we've tried it, and what that's like. So the other thing that it affects, there's huge negative health impacts with cancer, especially breast cancer. There's immune system effects. They also had some interesting research on how there's brain activation effects, and that it decreases motivation. They had rat research studies that rats that were given estrogen had massive decreases in motivation. I mean, they lost all motivation to do anything, like including sex drive, working out, like nothing. So partly this was like, hey, yeah, I could just blame my lack of motivation from going to the gym on the estrogen. You can't blame it all on that. Yes, it does come down to you, but some of these things, if you are carrying massive amounts of extra estrogen in your body, it's not making it any easier for maybe you to find that motivation to go to the gym or to conquer something else in your life. So I found that very interesting. He also talks about blood clot complications. So there's a litany of things that are tied to this, things with thyroid. I mean, it just affects so much of our bodies. And so really getting his book, reading through it, and starting seeing all the things it affects, I'm sure as I read it, I noticed what things in my life I was seeing ties to. And you definitely were like, probably like, bing, yeah.
Oh, there was
bing,
so much.
I
I mean, just one thing that he talks about, and I'm probably jumping way ahead, but just a little nugget. And we know that birth control pills can cause blood clots.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And it's from the estrogen in it. Like I never knew what it was in the birth control pills, and I actually had a blood clot when I was on birth control like 20 years ago. But I remember, like I have since had blood tests to find out, you know, what happened, why, and there's nothing that shows any tendency toward that. And I've had a couple doctors say must have been the birth control, and so it's like really just, I mean, stuff like that, thyroid.
Oh, and he goes through massive amounts of research where the large cities with the water, the amount that's being flushed out of the water from all those birth control, and how much it's affecting the entire city, the entire population.
And like literally, what does he say? Like I don't remember his saying, but like we have reclaimed water, and so it's filtered, but estrogen's really sticky. And it doesn't like to be, and it's really small, I think he said, and it doesn't like to be filtered out of water. And so we are literally like re-drinking birth control in our water.
Yeah.
It's like, and this, we will say this is all very overwhelming information.
Yes, you may have to pause this video and come back to it, especially as you start hearing some of this stuff. It was overwhelming at first for us, But when we started thinking about the research and what they're finding and how we've seen those effects on our lives, it started to bring that bulb over our heads, that aha moment where you really start thinking, wow, this is serious. Like this is not a soft science. I mean, this is hard medical science. Taking it serious was something that was pretty easy for me to start to do with Dr. J and his expertise and what science is out there on it. So.
Yeah, and let me go back and clarify about the reclaimed water. So there's, just really quick, because I would be like yelling at the screen right now. So there's reclaimed water that is reclaimed to water outside to do irrigation, but then that is a step before it's then like recycled again and filtered again for drinking water. So even our water that we drink here in Florida where we are in Florida is still a type of reclaimed water. Yeah. So anyway, it's not the kind that stinks, that is in the stinklers, as he calls them.
Yes.
The stinklers in Florida. It's not that, but it's still recycled again. Okay.
So the interesting thing is, and Dr. J talks about this, there's not an immediate symptom that comes from all this. It's not like you ingest massive amounts of estrogen, maybe in a food or in water, and we'll talk about this, but it's not like immediately the next day you feel sick or you have a headache or there's that immediate impact. And that's the problem, because it's ingesting it over time and it's in the body, almost kind of just sitting there, storing and making these massive changes that are then causing real systemic problems for us in the future. I know personally in my family, we've had many issues with cancer. And I think of how much of that could have been tied to this. And just ways to kind of push past some of that stuff and learn. It is amazing to see the changes. So, just to let you know, there was some research that was done with this. They looked into cancer rates globally. It was since 1980, breast cancer rates have gone up 250% globally.
From 1980 to 2010. So I mean, that was 9 years ago.
Yeah, and so it's amazing to think, where's the massive change coming from? How could that have been so different? And when you start thinking about what's changed with our foods and how foods are grown and packaged, and it really starts to hit home. The other thing that they started talking about was puberty rates.
Yep.
Now, for girls that are going through puberty, he actually mentions that medical doctors were looking at just changing the actual medical literature from like 13 and 14-year-olds to like 10 to 9-year-olds as when girls go through puberty, instead of really digging in and looking at some of the evidence, like why would there be this massive change? And I know when we talked about this with my mom, when we first started learning about it. She was down here visiting before school started. My mom from a different generation talked about how, when I went through puberty, that was normal, 13, 14 years old. That was not the same for you.
No, I went through puberty at 10. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors, but I don't think that in Ryan's mom's generation that you would have seen girls going through puberty at 9 or 10.
Yeah, that change is, again, maybe not 100% tied just to this issue, but it is having a large impact. He talks about the science of where the estrogenics are tied directly to the puberty change. It is pretty amazing to hear about the science behind it, along with maybe other factors. And then one other interesting study that he talked about was they did research with pregnant women. Pregnant women that used perfumes during pregnancy versus pregnant women that didn't use perfumes. And we'll talk about this as well when it comes to where you find estrogenics.
But spoiler, you find them in perfumes.
The pregnant women that used perfumes, they tested their blood, they had 163% higher levels of estrogen in their blood than those that did not use perfumes. So the effects that this has not only on women, but also on unborn babies.
Yeah, they were saying you can pass it down to, I think, 2 generations.
Absolutely.
You can pass down an increase in estrogen just from the beginning, which was frightening. And I was kind of like, oh, we've had our children. I can't make the changes to then help them from the beginning, but we can help them going forward.
Absolutely. And Dr. J talks about that. Changes can be made now to absolutely start to clean your body out from the estrogens, the extra estrogens that are stored in it. So where can you find it? Let's get into that.
Awesome.
Good stuff. So we first talked about the water. Yes, and we drink a lot of it. If you're like me, if you're like us, it's water and wine. So we drink
That's a whole other video.
ton of water. And so really Dr. J talks about ways of trying to improve that. And we'll talk about a little bit at the end what changes we've made.
Yeah.
But it is a ton in the water. And that specifically is coming from the pesticides. So the atrazine and the glyphosate, our good old Roundup. So glyphosate is the highest and atrazine is the second highest of the pesticides used. He talks about numbers with those, how long they last in the water. They last so long. You have to read the book to like really start to understand the effects of this. It's massive.
And it's a lot of really hard science. He's super statistics guy and super scientist.
My PhD beat it into me.
Yeah.
So.
I am not, like, I would start to kind of zone out the numbers because I was like, okay, I get it. It was bigger. That was just,
yes.
So know that you can listen to it or read it with that in mind. Okay.
But yeah, they were finding upwards of 3,000 nanograms per liter within water. So again, you start thinking of those numbers, what's naturally in our body at 20 for men, 20 to 400 for women, depending on the time of the month. Then you start thinking, wow, 3,000. I mean, this is a lot, right? So the other areas in plastics. So big push with the government, we got to go BPA free. Everybody knows about BPA. Oh, it's on the bottles. Oh, this is BPA free. But what you don't know is there are all these other bisphenols, BPS, BPF, BPC, they all act just like BPA. They all are estrogenic, and those have not been banned. Now, a lot of this stuff is all banned within Europe. Europe allows 0 of the pesticides in their water, 0. America allows 3,000. Wow, okay. There actually, what shocked me was in some of the water and foods, actually China, and get this, Russia have stricter laws to restrict this than we have in America. Like, how is that possible? So, somewhat frustrating. Maybe you're not shocked to hear that our government isn't always doing maybe what's best for us or fighting what's best for us. Other countries are doing more for their populations. But this is why it's so important for us to be out there and sending that message and learning, because you've got to really look into it and make those changes for what's right for you and what you feel is best for you. So the plastics are a big one. And let me tell you, when I heard about this, and Dr. J talks about if you turn over plastic bottles, we'll start with plastic bottled water. You turn those over, on the bottom you'll see that little triangle, and there'll be a number in the middle. If it has a 2, 4, or 5, you're good to go. And you pretty much can guess which ones will have a 2, 4, or 5 because they're kind of this cloudy, not very good looking plastic. So to get really clear, gorgeous plastic, you have to put all this really horrible bisphenol estrogenics into the plastic, and this is what is leaching into the water. So anything that's a 1, you'll see 7s, anything that's not a 2, 4, or 5, this is bad. And he talks about how the length of time it's in the plastic, that will affect it. There's more leaching for time as an issue. The other one is heat. So you always heard, if you have a plastic bottle of water in your car and it gets really hot, don't drink it. Let me tell you, he talks about even the effects when it's in room temperature. And my immediate mind went to, well, the company is bottling that water somewhere in a facility and it's sitting in a factory. It's probably not air conditioned or cooled. It's not a refrigerated factory. Then it gets put on a truck to be delivered. That is not a cooled or air conditioned truck that keeps all those bottled water cold. And then it sits in another factory somewhere where then your grocery store puts it on another truck to ship it to the grocery store. And so it has already leached over all of those, God knows how months, weeks or months before it ends up in your house, before you drink it. Maybe you put it in your refrigerator to cool it, but the leaching has already occurred by that point in time.
Yeah.
So plastics were a huge one, and you go beyond water because things you buy, we were like turning over bottles of salad dressings or ketchup, stuff for your pancakes, syrup for your pancakes.
Oh, thank you for
Oh my
reminding me.
gosh. We looked at, we have mostly glass bottles for our olive oil and things like that.
Oils.
But oils are way worse because the estrogen molecule likes and travels easier through oils.
It likes oil or fat.
Better than water, so it is definitely leaching through the oils even faster. Turned over my peanut butter that was organic almond peanut butter, trying to be healthier, right? Turn that over, big old fat one on the bottom of those. Last weekend, I'm at the grocery store turning over every plastic jar of peanut butter, and they're all ones. And I'm like, great, all that, it's a natural peanut butter with the separated oil. And I'm just looking at it going, oh my gosh, it's just an estrogen bomb waiting to go off in our bodies. So it was amazing to start turning things over in our house and finding what was something that was a 2, 4, or 5, which I cheered for. Our shaker bottles, which are a cloudy, dark plastic that don't look very appealing, they're 2s. Awesome, right? But so many other things that were not a 2, 4, or 5. So those were big to check for sure. But if it's not liquid, if it's a powder substance, Dr. J actually emailed him on this because, my supplements that I have one of my protein isolate that I have after my workout was in a huge 5-pound jug, was a number 1. And I'm like freaking out because I have a year of taking whey protein isolate. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, now my strength gains are gone because I'm ingesting all this estrogen. I'm trying to work out to put on muscle, and now this is hurting me. So he did say that the whey protein wasn't an issue. If it's liquid, that's the issue. And time and heat are the really 2 big ones to pay attention to.
And you should have seen him when I got home that day. He was going through, and he was on this rampage. It's a 1! It's a 1! And I was like, okay. And then he explained.
Yeah, and it's tough. The medicine bottles, foods that are put in plastic, sunscreen. Not only estrogens within sunscreen, but the sunscreen bottles. So listen, I know this is overwhelming. We knew we wouldn't be able to eliminate 100% of the estrogen. Even Dr. J says you're really never going to be able to eliminate 100% of these estrogenics from your life. But we kind of felt like we've got to make some kind of impact. We've got to do something, right? If we get rid of 50%, we're better off for our life, for our health, for longevity. If we get 70% out, how much better off could we be? So the other ones that he talked about was food. So I'm thinking about, oh my gosh, food. So he said all foods were tested, and foods were, remind me again, everything was under 1,000
per 100 grams.
Nanograms per 100 grams of food? Yeah. Okay. So he basically mentioned that everything was like around 100 or under that 1,000, but there were 2 that were through the roof. Soy, 103,000 nanograms per 100 grams in food for that amount of estrogen. Okay, so if all foods are around 100 or under 1,000, and soy is 103,000. You're like, okay, wow. The other one was flax. Flax was a little over 370,000 nanograms per 100 grams. I mean, when we heard this, it was like, okay, well, we've already worked gluten-free, dairy-free, eliminating soy. That was something we worked on. But we really started taking the soy thing a little bit more serious when we saw those numbers. Yeah, absolutely. Now, he did talk about if the soy is fermented, and remember we've even mentioned this in other videos, Heather's done a lot of research, and I started looking into it too, about the blue zones and what people are doing to live longer in those blue zones. And maybe not live just longer. It's not like, well, I lived to 120, but they've lived into their 90s with little to no negative health issues. So when looking into some of those blue zones, you hear about how they cook foods. Soaked, sprouted, and fermented is another big one. And so they talk about, because we love to have our sushi on Sunday night, that's a treat, and we're like, sushi is awesome with soy sauce. It's not so great without soy. I really like the soy sauce. It's awesome. So we thought, oh man, no, we can't have soy sauce. No, the soy sauce, if it's fermented, and not all companies ferment their soy sauce. Some of them are cutting corners. But the ones that we use, we did research it. It is fermented, and that's okay because the fermentation process eliminates that estrogen. So yay, we still are enjoying the soy sauce with our sushi. So. Interesting to find about the soy and the flax, and I've talked to some people at work. They're like, you hear all this stuff about flax. Oh, it's so healthy. Oh, I'll have those crackers with flax, or a chip, or granola, or think of all the things that are bread of some kind that's got flax, or a cereal. This cereal has flax and 15 other of these grains that are great. Really starts making me question, how much of that we're ingesting and how it's affecting our bodies. The other thing he talked about that you'll find it in is red food color. So red 3, red 40, he says he wants to eliminate anything red dye, but red 3 and red 40, huge estrogenic effects. And we were at a candy store, and I started turning some things over. Oh, dear Lord.
Happy Halloween.
Yes, we're headed into the Halloween season, and so we're totally ruining all of these wonderful holidays.
I'm so sorry.
So, yes, this is why we do the treat review, because even if it is gluten-free and dairy-free and soy-free and all these things free, you can find great treats to eat. So you got to watch some of those Sunday treat reviews. We're not robbing you of enjoying some great treats.
But we're going to be handing out very different candy this year.
But, yes, thinking of our children and what kind of candy they're eating really makes me question just allowing them to repeatedly eating often candies with red 3 and red 40. Again, if you're having it once in a while, maybe not that big a deal, right? And there's other things we're going to talk about that we made changes wise, and if you make those changes, you can get those things out of your system. But would I constantly be eating maybe a red candy that has that red 30 or 40 ingredient in it all the time? No, I would not.
And it's not just red candies. Like it's like there were candies you were picking up that
or not just red, but have red 40 in it. Yes. So mold was another one, and again, not only just from breathing it, if it is in your house, but they also talk about mold with some of the grains.
Yeah.
So this is where for us, like going gluten-free kind of helps. Some of those grains are being stored in silos that have mold, and it's being transferred into the grains. And then that ends up into our foods. It's being fed to livestock. So this is why we're really particular about being like a little bit more grass-fed on the beef side, because when they start talking about how it's put into that grain, and then that grain is fed to cattle, between the pesticides, the atrazine, and the mold, they did blood tests on cow and found over 700,000 nanograms per liter of atrazine in the blood of that corn-fed, grain-fed cow. When you just start thinking about then that is ending up on our plates and eating it, it makes me want to be a little more particular about the grass-fed beef. So the other one, and I'm going to let Heather talk about this one because this is a big one, and I think it really touches home for some of the risks for cancer and breast cancer. Not that men don't have some of those risks, but really that risk is largely for women. It's in the cosmetics and the soaps. So I'll let you talk a little bit about that because that was a big one.
So your skin is basically a giant mouth, is what they say, or what Dr. J says, right?
Right.
And so if there are phthalates, parabens, all these things, they're estrogenic, and we're going to get into the changes we've made.
Sure.
So, and I'll be completely honest about what we've tried.
Yes.
So we went to, this is a shampoo that he recommended, and I looked at reviews and people said it was great. I don't wash my hair every day. I work out really hard. Didn't really clean my hair very well. But I mean, I think if you use it every day, you're probably all right. But
Absolutely. So in a lot of the soaps and shampoos, if you look on the back and they have perfume or fragrance listed as an ingredient, the American government allows the companies to put that term to be a blanket term to hide all of these horrible chemicals that have estrogen. So it's interesting because Kylie has always had an issue with massive breakouts on her hands.
she has eczema.
And we never knew what it was from.
Yeah.
And then this was the only soap that didn't do it to her. Come to find out, this is one of the recommendations from Dr. J. Of course, it's a very, if you can see it, it's somewhat cloudy as a plastic. Of course, it's a 2. So we've changed to this soap. This has been a kind of a 3-in-1 soap that you can use in the shower for your body, for your hair. It's been okay with me, but I have short hair. For Heather, it did not work for her. Her hair, it was tough.
Yeah.
So, but trying to find that balance. And I think for some of the cosmetics, I know you said you bought one of the cosmetics products that was supposed to have no parabens or things like that.
I bought a clean mascara. I'm not sure how clean it is. I'll be completely honest. I'm overwhelmed when it comes to reading all the ingredients and cross-referencing. But I looked on a list of what was supposed to be like the cleanest mascaras because I was out of mascara. I was like, well, let me just try a clean mascara.
Yeah.
So I bought one, and it has perfume in it. It has a fragrance, and it doesn't smell like an essential oil. So, and that's the thing about these. I believe they're fragranced with an essential oil, and we tried the unscented one, and I just couldn't.
Couldn't do it.
I couldn't do it. So.
And this is what we're telling you, right? We're trying to make small strides. Our goal was never eliminate 100% of all the estrogenics. The goal was where can we find the best ways to get rid of the most? So the first thing we did was water, the filtered water. Looked into that and found what we needed to do to make sure our water that we were drinking was not going to have it. The second thing was what we were using to drink the water. So you often see us using our Yetis instead of wine. But the stainless steel, awesome. Glass, awesome. There are bottled water that's glass, that's recommended. You can keep that in your car, it can heat up, no problem at all, right? So that's been a big shift with what we're drinking out of. If we're doing anything with plastic, we're trying to find anything that's a 2, 4, and 5. Like I said, I have a shaker bottle to mix my protein shake after my workout. That one is fine. I think it's a 5. So, we're trying to find those ways to eliminate it. That next one was the soaps. So we went through the entire house in terms of the soap we're using for our hand and for our body in the shower. We're trying to change that. The kids love
Oh my gosh.
the shower. The 3-in-1 shower gel, they love it. And we're really happy to know that every time they're taking a shower, what's on their skin, what's in their hair is that. And, for Heather, I know once in a while she still uses her Moroccan oil because I can smell it. I enjoy the smell of that. And hey, if it's just maybe once in a while, she's better off, right? I mean, we're better off if it's not every single day that you're maybe utilizing that super fragranced shampoo that's just making it that much harder for your body and for your health. So the soaps, detergents.
So we switched laundry detergent. We switched to one that Dr. J recommended. He recommended 7th generation. I think it's fragrance free, and it's the powder. Because he said about the powder, I guess because it wouldn't leach from the plastic bottle.
So he talks about that, but he also talks about the difference between bacteria that grows.
That's right.
So when it's in the liquid, with the powder, it can't eat through and form those estrogens. And so, again, beyond my understanding scientifically, but there was a benefit to the powder more than the liquids detergent for your laundry.
And we switched, and we've had there was no.
Yeah.
But so interesting. This was a huge thing for us in the beginning. Fragrances in your laundry detergent and fabric softeners are estrogenic, and they get on your body, and they then they're
because you're wearing those clothes all day, and so it's just right there on your body, and
rubbing
you're
on your
sweating,
body,
and it's just
And so we've never, well, not never, but we stopped using fabric softeners a long time ago because of the intense smell. And I think we had heard that there was something about them that you shouldn't use. And so we just didn't use them. And now we know why.
Yeah. Now, he did say if you do like perfume, spraying it on the cloth, on your clothing, would be better than spraying it directly on like your skin, your wrist, or your neck. So anyway, not to digress. We didn't need to change the dishwasher detergent.
No,
we had already had that. Was something we already had used, so we were like, yay, we're at least getting that part right. So foods, obviously gluten-free, dairy-free, so we're eliminating a lot of the problems with grain or mold or the pesticides, but we've been more conscious of the soy. We don't have a ton of flax in our diet, so that wasn't an issue, but really being conscious now of reading what does have the soy. And we've always been conscious of the beef and what we're getting for the meat, for grass-fed, and talked about that earlier, why that might be really important to do that on that change. So let's get to a little bit about how we feel, because we've done this now for 2 months, and the changes are kind of astonishing. Because we thought, well, Dr. J says you could do this and start to see a change, but we're like, well, what kind of change are you going to feel? Like, what's going to be different? So what changes have you felt?
Well, I think it's interesting, this kind of coincided with around the time that my hip was really acting up and I wasn't able to work out as much. And typically that would mean that I was extremely grumpy and moody. And it happened in the very beginning, but I don't think I've been horribly, like I would expect if I hadn't been getting my cardio fix in several times a week. There was only 1 month that I had my period since, but it was easier than normal, and it was right on time, and I had gotten to where it was really irregular. So we're gonna see what happens in the next month, because I was a little bit like, this is weird. So we'll see. I know that might be TMI, but
yeah, unbelievable. For me, I found my energy was different. And for me, the biggest thing I found was cognitively. I felt a change in that brain activation that he talks about. I've had a ton of motivation in the last 15 months. I'm kind of a little bit excited and having a pretty exciting weekend because on Friday, I completed my fifth, what would you call it, 90-day?
Yeah.
My fifth 90-day workout program or challenge. And so to have gone now 15 months straight, only missed 2 workouts because of having flu. But, I've accomplished something, and the consistency of something that I've found a lot of pride in, and that integrity that I've kept for myself, and we've talked about that, has been huge. So I've had that motivation, but let me tell you, the feeling for brain activation and motivation, so changed. And the biggest thing has been my memory. So I would say in the last 10 years, I have felt this issue with remembering names or specific facts. Actors and actresses. I can't remember celebrity names to save my life. You can ask Heather. It's bad.
It's people
Yeah, there are times where I'm just blanking on names left and right, and it's kind of gotten worse over the last 10 years. In these 2 months, I am reeling off names of people in movies, research studies, like facts. They are just coming out of me. The ability for me to store more information and then recall that information has been drastic.
It's really noticeable.
Yeah, and so as drastic as some of the changes have been for you that you've seen in your body and how you felt, and I know you haven't been able to work out as much, your weight you've been able to keep so consistent. Yeah. And I think a combination in your commitment for food, you've been doing an awesome job with that.
Thanks.
But also this change with eliminating a lot of these estrogens, I think is helping you to maintain that. And I will tell you, I've been working out so hard and seeing the change in my body. And this last 3 months, I did a workout program with Athlete X. Anybody that knows Jeff Cavalier, go on to YouTube. He's got awesome stuff. Thank you, Jeff. You're amazing. The last 3 months, I have made the biggest gains in my body, the most muscle gains, the most shredded, seeing parts of abs I've never seen in my entire life. It's amazing, but I will say those stubborn areas where I have never been able to see the striations in my body, I think the elimination in the estrogenics has made it easier to get rid of some of that fat, to finally see it. So it's getting me that much more motivated. See, it's a compounding effect where I want to go after it even harder the next time in the gym. And I've been doing some pretty crazy stuff in the gym, some CT Fletcher level stuff. I'll let you go on YouTube and watch some of his stuff. Unbelievable. So one of the things we will give you as suggestions, and these are all Dr. J's suggestions, really doing your best to try to eliminate it. In his book, he gives different levels of gold, silver, and bronze level of what you can get to really try to eliminate this stuff from your life. And he also talks about really getting into your exercise, because as you're heating your body up and you're sweating, you're getting rid of those toxins. The only way to break that estrogen out of the cell for it to be flushed out of the body, heating the body up. So great exercise. We live in Florida. Get outside, people. It's hot. You can get this stuff out in the heat. Again, I don't know how long or what level of heat, but he does talk about the effects of sauna, especially infrared sauna, and there's tons of research. Finland studies for this increasing up to 4 to 6 years of your lifespan with consistent 4 to 5 days a week of sauna treatments, 30-minute sauna treatments. So he does talk about if you can get into some sauna treatments, that especially the infrared, gets to a deeper level of heat, will pull that out of the cell and you can get it flushed out of your system. So there are ways for us to get rid of this and start to benefit from having less estrogen in our body and live longer. So I will tell you, Dr. J has been a life changer for us. Thank you, Dr. J. We definitely recommend this book. His website, ajconsulting.com, he has a list of tons of things that he uses and recommends. It's a wealth of knowledge and information. We definitely recommend going to that. Like we said, we are not medical professionals, but we've tried some of the things that he's given and really seen a huge difference.
And again, we know it's overwhelming. I mean, we have been alternately overwhelmed in some things. I think me more than Ryan, overwhelmed in trying to make these changes. But once you make them, you've made them. You know, you've bought the shampoo or you've bought the body wash or whatever it is. It's not like you have to keep making that change over and over.
Absolutely. You're a step closer.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure this has been the longest Caserta's
I'm afraid to look at the
on the couch time. But we're gonna let you guys go. Can we break out some wine now?
Yeah.
So
thanks for asking.
I think I'm done with my Eddie. So we're gonna break out a little wine and celebrate the weekend, and stay strong, stay healthy, everyone. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching.